Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. Tonight we saw the Boston Celtics and Indiana Pacers win their opening matchups of the inaugural play-in tournament, and that postseason feel of basketball got me really excited to preview the first-round series of my own favorite team, the Milwaukee Bucks, as they take on the Miami Heat. Based off of these statistics alone, it would appear that the Bucks should be pretty huge favorites in this series. This year, the Bucks ranked 5th in net rating, posting a plus 5.5 point per 100 possession net rating. The Heat, on the other hand, were all the way down at 16th, averaging a plus 0.1 net rating per 100 possessions. There is a significant discrepancy in those two numbers, and based off of that, you'd think the Bucks should be heavy favorites. However, last year, the Bucks lost to the Heat convincingly in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs in just 5 games. So when people consider this matchup, they seem to remember that series a lot more than they take into consideration what happened in this season. However, I think that the Bucks have developed some really interesting new ways to beat the Heat's strategies of old. When the Heat tried to build the wall defense that they did to such success last season, the Bucks have different ways of beating that were not really present in last year's playoff series. The Bucks added a new system offensively in which they utilize the dunker spot. That is where you have a player basically stand under the rim and their only role on offense is to catch passes from penetrators and finish at the rim. That has allowed Giannis Antetokounmpo to really grow as a passer because now, instead of only kicking the ball out to three-point shooters for open looks, he can also find guys under the rim for easy shots at the basket. That will allow him to find more open teammates for easier shots in the playoffs when the Heat try to build that wall on him. In addition to that, the Bucks have also added better three-point shooters than they had in years past. They replaced Marvin Williams, Eric Bledsoe, and Ersan Ilyasova with Jrue Holiday, Bobby Portis, and Bryn Forbes. Jrue is shooting 39% from 3 this year, Bobby is shooting 47%, and Bryn is shooting 45%. Those 3 marks are outstanding, well above league average, and they give the Bucks 3 new weapons that can really make teams pay whenever they overhelp off of those 3 guys and overcover Giannis Antetokounmpo. In addition to that, on the defensive end of the court, the Bucks are better equipped to deal with the constant off-the-ball screening actions that the Heat love to run because the Bucks have developed a solid switching scheme on the defensive end of the court. That's going to make it easier for Bucks defenders to stick with Heat shooters on those off-the-ball screening actions. That, in combination with better perimeter defenders in general with the additions of Jrue Holiday and PJ Tucker, allow a quality defender to be defending Jimmy Butler at all times, which is incredibly important when you have a player like Jimmy who can both get around big guys to get to the rim and take advantage of mismatches against smaller players for easy shots. So in general, I think that the Bucks are much better equipped than they were last season to take on the Heat, and I think that it's going to be really difficult for the Heat to win because the Bucks will not be beaten in the same ways that they were beat last season. Now that we've covered the general changes that have occurred in this matchup since last season's playoffs, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this matchup. We'll start by talking about what happens when the Bucks are on offense because I think that this is the more interesting side of the ball. The Bucks ranked 7th in offensive rating this season, averaging 117.5 points per 100 possessions per cleaning the glasses metric, and the Heat's defense ranks 8th, allowing 111.7 points per 100 possessions. Each of these two teams ranks in the top 10 on this side of the court, and it's going to be very interesting to see whether the Bucks' incredible offense or the Heat's unstoppable defense is going to be able to win this matchup of solid units. The first question that always needs to come into question when discussing a series involving the Milwaukee Bucks is who guards Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Miami Heat have multiple really good options in this scenario. They have Trevor Ariza, Bam Adebayo, and Jimmy Butler. I think Ariza probably sees the bulk of these minutes because that allows the Heat to keep Bam Adebayo on Brook Lopez and Jimmy Butler on Jrue Holiday or Chris Middleton. So Ariza is probably going to see a lot of time on Giannis. Trevor is completely capable of playing a role similar to what Jay Crowder did in last year's second-round playoff matchup, but I think that Ariza isn't quite able to play with the same physicality that Crowder did, and that's going to make it harder for him to defend Giannis. In the end, I don't actually think that it matters all that much who guards Giannis, because the Heat are going to be collapsing on him regardless of who the primary defender is. There's going to be help defenders present every single time Giannis tries to get into the paint. And that's why this season we saw Antetokounmpo average just 17 points per game against the Miami Heat, a far cry from his 28 point per game average for the season as a whole. So with that being said, I think it's pretty likely that we see Giannis take on more of a facilitator and passer role against the Heat than he usually would, where he's usually more focused on scoring. So in this case, instead of seeing Giannis average 28 points and 6 assists like he did in the regular season, we could see something closer to 23 points and 9 assists for the entirety of this series. So with that being said, I don't necessarily think that the primary defender on Giannis is the biggest of deals. Jrue Holiday, in my opinion though, could have a huge series as a scorer. In this matchup, he's likely going to be guarded by one of the Heat's smaller guards, whether that be Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic, Duncan Robinson, or Kendrick Nunn. Against these 4 players, Jrue has a lot of potential to do work both as a driver and a post-up threat, as he possesses a significant strength advantage against the smaller guards of the Miami Heat. If he's able to make Miami pay for putting those small guys on him, there's a chance that the Heat could be forced to switch Jimmy Butler onto Jrue, especially if Holiday is able to score upwards of 20 points in the first couple of games in this series. If that happens, then that takes Jimmy off of Chris Middleton, who I suspect the Heat will want to keep their star defensive player on for the majority of his touches. Otherwise, Chris has a chance to really go off in this series. Against the Heat last year, he had a few huge games, with Game 4, the game where Giannis Antetokounmpo went down with an injury in the second quarter, being the one that really stood out. Chris had upwards of 35 points in that game and could not seem to miss for the majority of that game. He did cool off in the second half, but that's because Giannis was out, and Chris had an even larger offensive load than normal on his shoulders. Assuming Giannis and Jrue Holiday can stay healthy, I think we could see Chris really have a huge series for the Bucks, where he's consistently making Miami pay if they don't have Jimmy Butler or Trevor Ariza defending him. Regardless of who Jimmy is defending, there's likely going to be a mismatch present for the Bucks at all times. Whether that mismatch is for Chris Middleton or for Jrue Holiday, the Bucks are going to have to exploit that favorable matchup. And if they can do that, that could help this team win even quicker than even I, a Bucks optimist, expect them to. Now that we've talked about the offense, let's talk about what happens when the Bucks are on defense. The Heat's offense is ranked just 19th in the NBA per Cleaning the Glasses metric of offensive rating, as they score just 111.8 points per 100 possessions, and the Bucks' defense ranks 10th in the NBA, allowing just 112.1 points per 100 possessions. I think that in this side of the court is where the Bucks have an even bigger advantage than where they do when they are on offense. I think that there's a good chance that we could see the Bucks really stop a lot of those off-the-ball actions that hurt them so badly in last season's playoffs. So that calls into question more of the 2 primary actions that the Heat run when they're not doing those off-the-ball actions. The first of those is the Jimmy Butler isolations. So the question here is, who is going to be the primary defender on Butler? I think for the most part it's going to be Chris Middleton. When the Bucks have been matched up with teams that have players that are similar to Butler, such as the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and the Nets with Kevin Durant, the Bucks have kept Chris on those guys for the majority of those matchups. So I think that we'll see Middleton on Butler for large portions of this series. However, that's not to say that Jrue Holiday and PJ Tucker will not have turns of their own, because I certainly think that they will. Especially if we see Chris struggle with Jimmy's physicality, the Bucks could go with one of the stronger options in the 2 players that they've acquired over the past calendar year. I think that Jimmy will more than likely not be stopped. He's an incredible player who should finish either on the first team All-NBA this year or the second team All-NBA. I'm not sure that he will, but I think that he's had a terrific season for the Heat that has gone largely underrated. So he's not going to be stopped. You don't stop players of that caliber. However, I do think that when the Bucks make the adjustment to put Drew Holiday on him, we could see Holiday really slow Jimmy down, and that's going to give the Bucks a much better chance of winning this series, because last year, if you remember correctly, Butler had multiple 30-plus point games where he also added 8 or more assists. The other question is whether or not the Bucks can stop the weak side pick and roll. When Jimmy isn't isolating and the Heat aren't running off-the-ball screening actions, they run a lot of pick-and-roll actions with Goran Dragic as the primary ball handler and Bam Adebayo as the primary screen setter. In this matchup, we'll probably be seeing a lot of either Dante DiVincenzo or Drew Holiday defending Dragic, and Brook Lopez is probably going to start out on Bam. I do think that there's a chance that we see Brook really struggle to defend this pick and roll. Lopez has a hard time guarding at the point of attack at the screen. It's hard for him to come to the level of the screen because usually he's either going to get blown by the guard or the big man rolling to the rim is going to have an easy shot at a layup. So it's more likely that when Brook is on the court, the Bucks are going to be in the drop coverage scheme that we've seen so frequently over the past couple of seasons. Dragic last year was really able to make the Bucks pay as he was the leading scorer for the Heat in the Bucks series. If he can continue to make Lopez pay for dropping back on those screening actions, I think that the Bucks are going to have to adjust, and that probably means going to small ball lineups. That hurts on offense, where Lopez has a chance to really pound mismatches. Bam Adebayo is a terrific defender, but we saw Brook have a lot of success playing against Bam in the last game against the Heat, as he had 18 points on 9 for 10 shooting, and he also was able to pound mismatches against players like Nemanja Bjelica in that game. But on defense, if Lopez can't defend in space, it's going to be difficult for the Bucks to stop that weak side pick and roll. So I think it's likely that we will see a combination of PJ Tucker and Giannis Antetokounmpo guarding Bam if that is the case. So Lopez being able to guard that pick and roll is important for the Bucks, and if he struggles, adjustments will be necessary. I really respect this Miami Heat team. Last season in the playoffs, where they made a run all the way to the NBA Finals, they proved that they are experienced, disciplined, and insanely well coached. Erik Spoelstra has a genuine case to be the top coach in the entire NBA. However, I think that the Bucks upgrades really push them over the top. They have a lot more talent on their roster than the Heat do, and that's going to give them a significant advantage despite not having the best matchup in this series. I think the Heat are really going to struggle to score on the offensive end of the court, where the Bucks' switching scheme and their better perimeter defenders are really going to allow them to suffocate the Heat's offense and not allow buckets to be easy to come by for Miami whatsoever. I also think that on the offensive end, the Bucks shooters are going to make enough shots for the Bucks to win this series fairly easily. I'm really tempted to pick the Bucks in 5 games, but I think that it's a safer bet to go with Brandon Jennings' famous quote and take the Bucks in 6. Let me know what your thoughts are on this series in the comment section down below. Feel free to make a prediction. I want to know what you guys think. Leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.